Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at Drake's newest addition to the verse, the concept that is the Drake Ironclad. Now, first impressions, very first impressions when I saw this ship. Does it look like a brick? Yes. Is it the best looking space brick I've ever seen? Yes. Quite simply, I think this ship looks incredible. Okay, not only is it a monster, but it suits the Drake look down to it. They've nailed it as far as I'm concerned. The concept team, the art team, just yes. It looks incredible. Absolutely love the look of the Ironclad. The other thing, of course, that did throw me off was the announcement that it will be armoured. And I was like, okay, that's new. Drake believe in armour all of a sudden? Have they been drinking? What's going on there? But now we have a potentially fairly large dedicated freighter with armor from Drake. Very pleasantly surprised by this ship. I was expecting another explorer or another kind of fighter, but no, we have this monster, and I am so happy that it is going to be in the game at some point. Now, I think they said recently that they have a 2-year turnaround on these new concepts. That's what they're working towards. Whether or not that comes to fruition, I don't know. So let's talk about potential uses, the aesthetics, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty, and we are going to dissect the ship as much as possible to try and extrapolate as much information where we can. So we know it's going to hold a monstrous amount of SCU. It's also going to be able to hold vehicles. It has multiple turrets. It has an armoured roof that retracts, which will protect your cargo. And it will protect your ground vehicles if you store any in there. I just think it's going to be amazing. What I also like about the Drake Ironclad was the fact that they carried over the cockpit from the Caterpillar, which we know detaches and becomes a separate spacecraft. You can see it there in the top left with its 2 thrusters. That is actually where the ship gets flown. And I thought that was a really nice touch. Essentially, it's a Drake cutter strapped to the side of a massive ironclad. So very happy to see that. Could be quite interesting to fly. I imagine it's going to be. The control room is located adjacent that particular cockpit module. Let's call it that for easy reference in the future. So the cockpit module is adjacent the control room. But we'll dive into the control room a bit more. I've done a little bit of dissecting. So the Ironclad, absolute monster. Love it aesthetically. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. Let's pick out some of the finer details that I've noticed. Okay, so we know it has 10 massive engines at the back because 9 just won't do, apparently. At the front, I just don't know how to explain it. What they've managed to do is capture a modern cargo ship. Okay, think of an oil tanker or those massive ships that deliver cars in those shipping containers, and turn it into something that looks freaking amazing. It's so square and on the nose, but I think it's a charm that Drake capture well. So how they've done that is very impressive. I think it looks incredible. Now, as you can see, on the top, there is that retracting roof. As we can see in this image here, roof retracts so you can get cargo in and out, possibly spacecraft. Obviously, you're not going to get ground vehicles out there, but you have the ramp at the front of the ship, and we do have 2 beams here that appear to be tractor beam like arms that sit on top of the Ironclad. So that is how you're going to manipulate your cargo, I would have thought. Whether or not that's attached to the retracting shield itself, i.e. do they fold away, do they move with that opening? I think so, because they appear to be on rails. So I'm not 100% sure on that. That's speculation, but that would kind of make sense because obviously you're not going to need those tractor beams when the shield, that armor plate, is retracted and covering and protecting your goods. Internally then, it's a monster. Okay, absolute monster. At the front, very front of the ship, there's a brig, and I found that quite a bizarre asset to have at the front of the Ironclad, and I'll tell you why. Unless you get boarded, or you have crew that are just rebels, that's not going to get used too often. I kind of felt that that should belong in the assault variant, because in the assault variant, at least you could take prisoners of war, right? So quite a bizarre choice, but also pretty handy. So kind of threw me a little bit. So as you can see, at the front we have the brig with additional storage with extra security. Don't know what the extra security is, unless you just got a guard posted there. You can also see there's a sort of turret, 2 turrets at the front, and then the ramp directly below the brig. Would it be too much to swap that brig for a medical facility? I don't know. I would have preferred even a tier 3 med bay, because being around cargo, as you can see here, the cargo deck 1536 SCU of secure storage. I would have preferred a med bay because accidents are going to happen, right? People are going to get crushed by cargo. So maybe brig wasn't the best idea, but it's still not a terrible idea. Then we have an interior turret, which confused me a little bit. That's quite unique to have that in a ship. So my initial thought was, well, surely that's a similar turret to the one just outside the Klesha prison as you're about to leave after paying for your sins. There's that turret that guards the door. So I'm imagining it's a anti-personnel turret, which is remotely operated too, I believe. I guess that's anti-boarding action turret, so that you could regroup somewhere and maybe take down would-be assailants within the ship itself. I find that quite interesting, so we'll see how that turret develops. Then we have the control room with total access. Like, what does that even mean? I was a little bit... Okay, I mean, a control room is pretty self-explanatory as we control everything, but what's the total access about? No idea. And then the cockpit, take control. Now we know that this is the cockpit module that will detach and become a separate spacecraft for emergencies. It's not really going to be your daily driver, which is a very nice touch. On the exterior, we have the turrets, which are 1 size 5 manual, so you have someone sat in there, 1 size 3 manual, and 2 size 3 remotes. Now I imagine the remote turret would be controlled via the control room, excuse me. Then we have the cargo ramp for ground loading. And I like the cargo ramp being at the front. It's just going to make life so much easier getting in and out of this monster. Then we have the 3 size 2 tractor beams, which, again, I'm not entirely sure if they move with that shield, hangar top roof thing, which is armoured, or do they sort of fold away under the ship? We'll have to wait and see how that pans out, but I think having them directly above the cargo area of the ship is a stroke of genius. Then we have the command module itself, detachable command module with 1 size 2 remote turret. And then, of course, towards the rear, 10 dedicated thrusters, because, like I said, 9 just isn't enough. So, quite a few features in there. I was a little bit confused by the brig. I would have preferred a very simple med bay there instead of the brig itself, a tier 3 med bed. I think that makes a lot more sense. You know, industrial ship, cargo being swung around, vehicles, someone's going to get run over and need medical attention. So a little bit confused about that. Let's then talk about, because I've seen comparisons already, okay, because everyone does this. This ship is not designed to be a pocket carrier, okay? However, that does not mean that it won't be able to carry small spacecraft or even light fighters, for example. Possibly even medium fighters. I mean, it's such a massive ship. As you can see here, they've depicted a Pisces sat within the cargo area with that roof open. And you'll note there are no tractor beams to be spotted, so I want to see how this is going to work. So let's talk about then the Ironclad and the Liberator. Now, the Liberator, as we all know, is the shipping ship for shipping your ships for shipping, okay? This is tricky. I'm on 2 sides of the fence. I kind of don't want the Ironclad to fulfill the role of the Liberator. I think the Liberator is purpose-built to do that job. For the same, roughly same sort of money, the Liberator was designed from the ground up to move spacecraft. The Ironclad, from the ground up, has been built to carry ground vehicles and cargo. Maybe they'll allow small vehicles like Pisces, which would be the correct assumption, I think, if they've got pictures depicting it. But I don't want the Ironclad, taken away from the Liberator. You know, the Liberator is specifically to do that job. You know, a Formula 1 car could be a snowplow if you fold the front wing down, it doesn't mean it should. Do you know what I mean? I kind of just hope, yeah, one or two, maybe snub fighters, maybe a couple of Pisces or ships of that nature, sure. But an Ironclad filled with multiple Hornets, for example, I just don't think it's a direction I want to see that ship take, because I just feel if you want a carrier, you get the Kraken. If you want to transport ships and make a profession that way, you take the Liberator. The Liberator has a lot less defense. It's much easier to crew. There's pros and cons. Let me know what you guys think about the Ironclad versus Liberator, because I'm very sort of intrigued to hear your thoughts. I'm sort of sat on the fence. Like, in one way I do want the Ironclad to be able to some extent, and then on the other hand I really just don't want the ship to replace other ships that we have built for purpose, because this is where things get tricky. It's do you stick to the rules and have dedicated ships for that, or do you break the rules and just throw whatever you want in there and just go cause mayhem? I'm kind of sat on the fence about it, so please let me know. I'm very interested. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. There are pros and cons to the Ironclad and the Liberator. I think it's a whole different video where I'd have to really sit down and use my brain box to sort of come to a conclusion. So very tricky to deliberate on that one. Okay, moving on. Let's then talk about the ship that I picked up, which of course is the Ironclad Assault. First things first, this is the best paint that Drake have ever released in the history of humankind ever, period. It's yellow and it looks awesome. No paint required. Didn't even want my concierge paint. I'm just like, no thank you. I'm quite happy with this yellow. It looks incredible. So this ship is a bit more aggressive, let's say, has more turrets, designed to carry ground vehicles. However, I don't think the roof retracts like it does on the Ironclad standard variant. I think it's sealed, armoured and protected. So let's talk about then why I picked one of these up. So I mounted my Polaris because I'm never going to crew that ship. It's going to be so much of a headache, and it is an awesome ship, and I felt like I'd been stabbed in the heart when I did, but I had to do it. So my plan for the Ironclad Assault, well, what I have here is essentially a mobile storage unit. Okay, I can store, ridiculous amounts of SCU. When base building comes along, having this parked in protection mode, let's call it, with its shields up, with all my vehicles in, or all my valuable SCU, with turrets that I can throw some blades in, it just becomes extremely useful. I'm not going to have to keep calling vehicles. I'm not going to have to keep, transporting cargo from one ship to another. It's just all going to be sat in the Ironclad Assault with its armour, with its turrets, with its shields on, under the shields of my base. So you have to pierce the turrets, my base shields, then get in and then deal with the Ironclad. By the time you've done all that, I'm either running away bravely, which I do often. It's my favourite technique. You should definitely try it. Or fighting to the death. It gives me options, and I just think having this as a mobile storage unit, which is extremely well armoured, not sure how much range it's going to get, but I imagine quite a lot. The ability to carry vehicles, extremely useful. Extremely useful, because I've been sort of getting fond of the ground vehicles in game and started to develop a bit of a taste for them. I've got a mini ground fleet going. They're a lot cheaper, they're good fun, and if a ship really comes along that's a couple of quid extra or a few dollars extra, then it's normally a free LTI token. So very, very interesting. The Ironclad Assault, the paint scheme's amazing, as you can see here. 4 Nova tanks, and it appears to be one in the rearm repair refuel workshop area of the ship, where we have a Nova tank there with its turret off. So that's how I intend to use my Ironclad Assault. Mobile storage unit, plenty of protection, ground vehicles stored away safely, and it looks amazing. Yellow paint, sold. Okay, so let's take a look at the features of the Assault then. And as you can see here, we have a turret, 1 size 5 quad manned, so that's a manned turret, 2 size 3 quad remote, 2 size 3 remote, and 1 size 3 manned. I'm not sure this ship has the internal turret. I can't remember. We have the fortified ramp for vehicle deployment. Again, excellent to protect the ship if you are actually using it for its purpose of ground assault, deploying tanks and troops. Having an armoured ramp is obviously quite important. We have the command module and again 10 main thrusters. So in the assault role, the ship does have 32 drop seats at the front, which is, you could argue, a little bit overkill unless you're in a medium to large sized org or a small one with at least 38 people in it, for example. Then this is still a very valid ship. Kind of makes the Valkyrie a little bit vulnerable in some aspects, I feel, but again, I still would have preferred a tier 3 bed at the front of this ship as opposed to the jump seats. Cargo deck, 1152 SCU of secure storage. Ample room, mobile storage base, perfect. It does have the interior turret, and it's a size 2, so the same on the standard variant. Again, I think that'd be anti-personnel. Maybe you are actually attacking a base or assaulting a location, and they have multiple troops, and somehow you get overwhelmed. Then you've got a point of last recall that you can mow down those people as they try to infiltrate your ship. We have the control room, again, with total access to stuff and things, because good description there, thank you. So, in terms of layout, very similar, 2 different roles, but for me, I want the armour, I want my ground vehicles in there, or my important base building SU, something that's heavily protected, and this ship ticks the bill, just incredible. Right, let's take a look then at the weapons and components to be found on both variants of this wonderful ship. Okay, so as you can see, it's quite a lot to go through, so we're just going to power through it. So the role, armoured cargo, 6-man crew, a length 120 metres, a little bit bigger than a Carrack, width 52, height 20. Cargo, 1536 SU, quantum drive 1 times size 3. Quantum fuel tanks, it has 2 size 3s, shield generator 4 size 3s, quite hefty shieldage, radar 1 size 3, then we have the pilot seats, 2 remote turrets, thrusters we're not too worried about, turrets 1 size 5 manned, 2 size 3 remote, 1 size 3 manned and 1 size 2 interior. Does come with launchers and 2 S4 missiles and 3 size 2 tractor beams, so quite a lot going on for the ship. And with the Ironclad, there are assault variants, there are some differences. So we have obviously heavy dropship is the role with less cargo, 1152 SCU. Components appear to be the same, thrusters the same, a few more turrets. So we have 1 size 5 manned quad, 2 size 3 remote quads and 2 size 3 remotes, 1 size 3 manned, 1 size 2 interior remote turret. And then we have component fabrication, rearm refuel garage, main garage hall jump seats, upper walk area jump seats. So those are the differences. So where that Nova tank is being repaired at the back, I'm assuming that that is in fact the arm refuel and repair bay of the ship. So that is a very nice feature to have, especially if you have this ship parked and you just want to repair your vehicles. You can drive them in and out, fix them, jobs are good, and store the relevant repair materials on board as well, and you are good to go. Like I said, mobile storage unit for me, I think it's an excellent variant. Quite surprising. Probably could have used a med bay, but hey ho. Okay, then we have the command module, as you can see here, which detaches. That should only be used in emergencies. So what constitutes an emergency? Well, maybe you get boarded, overrun, and the only way out is off and run to that command cockpit module, and jettison the ship. I believe they said that the technology is coming along, that it won't be long before we are able to use this, including the one found on the Drake Caterpillar. So that is something to look forward to. The community will most certainly get into mischief with the cockpit module being able to detach, but certainly extremely useful. It becomes the escape pod in essence. You will lose a lot of your cargo and vehicles if that is the case, so you want to be quite careful when and how you choose to deploy the cockpit module away from the ship. Right, let's start dissecting this ship and having a very detailed look. So we make our way through to the cockpit module, and straight away you Caterpillar owners will be very, very familiar with the layout of this ship. We do appear to have 2 more seats at the rear, similar to that of the Cat, and I can't see any extra doors, just the one on the left here. I think that's all the engines and thrusters would obviously be at the back of this particular cockpit module. So we have a few components. We have computers and radar, as you can see on the side here, on the left hand side of the screen, and then next to that is the door, and I believe it's just 3 doors. Will take you through to the command control room, so it's not too far to get to this area of the ship. As you can see, we make our way through said corridors, and there appears to be I'm not sure where we are right now, but I think at the end there is a living quarters. I'm not sure if it's a designated crew quarters or captain's quarters, and that takes us through. These shots will get a little bit jarring because I've had to move in, so I apologise for that, and I couldn't make it a bit smoother because it was removing some of the detail I wanted to capture. So that's the bed I think we saw at the end of the corridor, possibly the captain's quarters. Quite roomy if it is. Bed, storage, windows, and then we go down into the void through an airlock. This is definitely a living area. I'm 90% sure that this is a living area. So we have seating, we have TVs, monitors from the ceiling, very similar to the Corsair, which we would expect to share the same sort of design language, right? So possibly crew quarters on the left and these doors. In fact, I think that is definitely a crew living area. And then this shot, I believe to be engineering, and the key to my wonderful diagnosis there is, you know, the power plants, QT drive, jump tech, shield generators, all of that good stuff, lots of pipes and engineering type stuff and things at the back here. So that would be a correct assumption, I would have thought. Can't quite see what's on the top right there. I think armor lockers, suit lockers towards the rear of the ship, next to that airlock, just on the top right, you can see like the black I think they're armor lockers. 6 of them there, and then the airlock, which makes sense. So that is towards the rear of the ship. Bit more detail here. Lots of gubbins, power plant stuff, you know, tubes, where we get to see the classic CIG implementation of steam, which I love, by the way. And then from the other shot, if I pause it here, components, ease of reach and use. If it stays like this, a lot of space dedicated to components, so ship layout wise it's looking pretty solid as a engineering platform as well. So this is the control room from a bird's eye view, and there appears to be 4 seats, so I imagine some of these are going to operate the remote turrets. Maybe some other seats will operate the tractor beams above the roof. This is the Ironclad, not the Assault, I should say. That's my assumption. So remote turrets, the roof, the tractor beams, I imagine, and navigation, possibly all controlled from this sort of overhanging bridge that overlooks the cargo deck. We have the central corridor, which I believe takes us to the cockpit module, and then we can see the living area in the top right, and what appears to be the crew living quarters. So fairly simple to navigate, not as complicated I would have thought as the Caterpillar, because the first time I got in the Caterpillar I got lost. No shame in that, everyone does, and if you say you didn't, you're lying. So yeah, not too difficult to navigate. Everything seems relatively simple and straightforward. I'm not entirely sure how many decks there are, but let's continue anyway. And then we pivot round, and I've zoomed in here because it's definitely 4 seats, possibly some blades behind where the guy is standing. They look kind of computer bladey, and it would make sense to have them there, right? And then there's another exit that takes us through on his right hand side, and again this is another sweep around the control room, and you can see it overhangs the cargo area of the ship, which is massive. There's the ramp right at the end. Very much a Corsair cockpit scenario they've got. Now this is the interesting part. So for this, you can see they've got the 2 Drake mules here stored, but it's like a secret, well, it's not secret, but it's like a designated control zone for, now I'm not entirely sure how many vehicles you would be able to park in there. We know we've got the 2 mules, and there does appear to be another door behind the guy standing, and to his left possibly an elevator, which would be very useful to get to and from the control room, I guess. As we sweep around, and you can see a guy overlooking the cargo area on the top left there, and we sweep around to this area of the ship. I think there's a few components here. That does look like an elevator, and possibly behind it there's another door there as well, and possibly another door in the far right corner there. Maybe some components, I'm not entirely sure, it's quite difficult to see. And then of course, just the scale of this thing becomes more apparent. So ample room for your cargo, ground vehicles, light fighters, Pisces, maybe, gantries that are overlooking that area. Now, they did say they wanted to use those gantries as a form of protection. If you did get boarded, you could have the high ground and essentially put rounds on target and expel the invaders. Now, this is quite an interesting shot here, because we have the multiple layers being added. And it's cleverly done, what they've managed to put into this ship. You can see here, this is the final shot. I've zoomed in, and we have all the layers. We have the brig at the front, then the gargantuan cargo area with all the layers, control room, cockpit module, and various corridors and ladders that you can see on the bottom right of the ship. They go somewhere else, so not entirely sure where they lead, but it's very clever how they've managed to essentially put all that into the ship. And then we have this massive cargo area. It's going to be incredible owning one of these ships and using it in the verse. I'm very much looking forward to it. Like I said, mine will be a mobile storage unit where all my most valuable stuff will be protected, and I'll just leave the shields on and every now and again check on it, make sure they're not breaking. Here we have the brig. I think it's a novelty, really, to have a brig, but it kind of makes sense because you are going to be a target, right? People are going to see a giant freighter. You're more than likely going to have quite a lot of goods on board, and if you can apprehend those individuals, throw them in jail, they might already have bounties. You might be making money off of these people that you've captured. I just kind of feel that even a very basic medbed would have been the way to go. But with the respawning, would that make it unfair if you took the ship and then people just kept spawning on the tier 3 beds? I'm not sure. I just feel like a medbed would have been an answer. I just don't see the brig getting used all that often unless you have a rowdy crew. You know, that was my sort of feeling from it. It's not a bad idea, and it's not technically a waste of space, but I think there could have been other options open to them. And then finally we have the wonderful exterior, again with a little bit more detail than, it's easier to make out a bit more detail than in concept images. So everything looks good, to be honest with you. 2-year turnaround, let's say. I cannot wait to have one of these ships, the assault variant, and start getting to work with it. Of course, as I said before, I am really waiting for this game to take off in sense of, you know, the server meshing and the base building is a really big part of what I want to do in the verse. I want to go exploring, set up my homestead, have my mobile storage unit, which is heavily defended and has all of my assets that I think I'm going to need or use, maybe base building materials, have extended range, excellent shields, the firepower. Pretty much I'm going to be covered with the assault variant for what I plan to do and what I intend to do when the game comes to full fruition in the future. I think either the Ironclad standard or the Ironclad assault are going to be very, very useful, and many different scenarios are going to be dreamt up by players, so I look forward to seeing that. The ship has huge potential. It looks great. Specs, it's okay. Q&A will get more answers, like I said. We'll have to wait until then, but overall I'm very, very happy with this Drake concept. Very much looking forward to it, almost as much as my merchantman, believe it or not. Really looking forward to the Drake ship. So there we go, guys. That was my video on the Drake Ironclad and the Drake Ironclad Assault. Now, of course, a big, huge thank you to all of my channel members. Your support is always truly appreciated, and that's all from me, guys. So thanks very much for watching. If you did enjoy today's video, you know what buttons to press, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Take care. Cheers.